years, but I kind of want to know what you guys want to hear. You guys read my bio. We do a lot of different things at our farm. If you guys have a direction you want to go or hear about, whether it's organic, small grain production, interseeding cover crops, row crop production, organic row crop production, raise your hand, ask a question, we'll go that way. Okay?
Interceding.
Interseeding, okay. Anybody else?
Do you have grazing too, or?
We do have grazing. Robbie Jewell is going to cover some grazing aspects of it.
Double cropping?
Double cropping, okay. Yep.
Small grain.
Small grains. Okay, so we'll just kind of barge right into this thing and get started with that. First part is small grain production. In 2015, we switched from conventional production, no-till, minimum till, to full-on organic production. In fact, we had all of our inputs bought for the 2015 year, bought and paid for. In March, we switched and said we're going to go organic. You should hear the phone drop on those guys. He called and said, I'm returning all of it. You're like, what? Anyways, so it was a rapid switch, but that's the road we decided to go to create some long-term farming history. So,
Had you had experience with organic before you went?
we've never had the organic experience. I had a lot of people that I was kind of like peeking around the tree behind, watching the guys around Calmer and the core area, my mentors, I guess I'd call them today, that I was watching them and think, well, there's something there, so I didn't believe it, but I was watching long enough that they realized there was something there. So anyways, 911 acres, all organic, all certified this year. Last year was our last transition year. This is our family. This is why I'm doing this. And our farm philosophy, that's our mission statement, is to produce safe, reliable, sustainable food products in nature's image. That is my goal. I don't want to feed a car. I want to feed people. So that's what we're trying to do. And I want to grow it, and I don't want to buy it. Okay, I think we can do a better job growing our own stuff, whether it's fertilizer or nitrogen. And I want to leave it better than I found it because I'm actually buying it for my kids. So that's where I'm at. The recipe for us, I realize that you got to pick one or the other. You're going to farm with chemicals, you're going to farm with tillage, and mine is tillage. I don't like to have a lot of tillage, but I do have to have tillage, so I try to keep as much cover on the soil as possible, do purposeful tillage. Anybody know how deep a post rots? A post? Fence post? A wood fence post. How deep do they rot?
2 inches.
About no deeper than 4 to 6 inches. Okay, that's as deep as I want to go. I don't want to be turning 10 and 12 inches over. Okay, because the guy this morning he talked about alcohol production in your soil killing your biology. That's what we're doing. We flip that dirt too deep, we're killing our soil. So, so there's where I'm at there. Living roots, huge root exudates. Really trying to capitalize on those. They're a huge part of decompacting our soil. We can carry a lot of weight, manure tankers. That's how we get our stuff in the field. Our fragility, we use manure tankers, manure spreaders. We're driving on those fields quite a bit with those big semi-tires. And if we don't have roots in the soil, we have some really hard dirt. Okay, so they're huge. Keep roots in your soil. It's hard to compact a soil with roots in it. Create plant available nutrients with living covers. Get those nutrients cycling. If you plant rye and then you don't plant rye and you work that green rye in, the corn will be a foot taller, guaranteed right to the row. Thoughtful disturbance of the soil. Like I was saying, going back to that 4 to 6 inch depth max. Using diverse mixes. Not just do a rye, do cover crops, don't just do corn and something else. There's a huge misnomer out there that says if you have a weed in your field, it's not a clean field. You can have weeds in your field that aren't really weeds, that do not impact your top end yield. Limit the kill factor, quit using insecticides, herbicides, and fungicides. We're trying to create mycorrhizae associations at the root tip, and we're putting fungicides on our soil. I mean, everything we're doing is killing our soil, so we're trying to get away from that. Create competition for the unwanted. If I don't want a weed there, I put a weed there that I know I can take care of. Okay. You look at root types. You got your tap roots, your branch rooted soil weeds. You pull them weeds up and you match up your weed that you're going to put back. So if you have a pigweed, you put a brassica there or something like that to take that spot to do the same thing that weed's doing. And then diverse rotations where it's more than just corn and beans. First, if you're going to go to small grains, you got to establish a market. That's fairly simple. You just call around. The first year I had oats production, I contracted my oats to St. Ansgar. Realized that I could get the same price at the mill as I got at St. Ansgar at the end of the year. Just learned those things along the way. Variety is a huge thing. If you're going to take something to a mill that for food grade, you got to make sure you have the right variety and planting. You want to make sure you have the right amount of plants out there. Most people are planting, 1.5 bushels an acre for an old-time oat field. We're planting 3 to 5 bushels an acre now. Okay, we want to get those determinate stems up. Okay, I don't want the suckers. Those don't, the tillers. They don't have near the yield as the main plant does. Residue management. We want to get our soil work. Get that residue decomposted or composted for the next year, and then harvest some. Most of the harvesting equipment is pretty readily available. It's just usually sitting in someone's shed. They don't want it anymore. Our switch over to oats cost me about $3,500. So it wasn't a huge investment. So then you take your small grains off in July, and then what? You underseed it. You do summer covers. We've done both, and both have worked very good. Different reasons. One thing about this is kind of a huge thing right now. All the food processors are going away from desiccated small grains, and this is why. You have glyphosate in your Cheerios. Nobody wants glyphosate in your Cheerios. So it's everybody's gone away from that. Now we're back to swathing oats. They're cutting them direct, or small grains direct. Variety, you look at the intended market. There's a variety list. PFI puts out a variety list that does well, and even some of the mills will say these varieties will work for us. You just have to contact your mill. They'll actually tell you what you want to plant. Plant dynamics, you just kind of what problems you're going to have in your farm. A lot of us don't have the carryover in like rust right now that we had in the earlier days, because we haven't planted small grains on our farm for quite a long time. Pick your best suited variety, and you can even use the PFI's variety selector tool. That's where they go out and they plant test plots on each farm. We were in one of these a couple years ago. We planted 2 different varieties and compared and as a replicated, I guess 3 or 4 times. And they, you can see here right where the row is, and give that information back to them. And they put that tool together. We're looking, like I said, we're looking at putting about 5 bushels an acre, 3 to 5 bushels an acre on. Planting depth, you're looking at inch to inch and a half. Co-seeding, where you plant wheat, peas, oats together. Yeah.
What goes into your thinking when you're deciding whether to put 3, 4, or 5 bushels per acre on?
A lot of it has to go with going back to someone who knew more than I did. Like my grandfather said, if you want to grow good oats, plant 5 bushels an acre. And then I happened to buy a swather out of South Dakota, and I was talking to the guy, and he said, most of your yield is in the main stem. So if I don't plant it thick enough, just like corn, the thicker you plant it, the less tillers you got, less sucker ears.
Okay.
Kind of same philosophy.
There's no, you're not seeding anything else in your oat crop, then it's just 3 to 5 bushel oats, and then you're doing your cover after that.
No,
Or would you have a,
we do underseed our oats with clover.
okay,
Because we're organic, we want to get it ready for the corn crop the next year.
so you will have clover in that too in the spring seeding of
Yep,
oats.
correct. And we're seeding, 8 to 12 pounds an acre of clover underneath our oats. It's weed competition. It's, you know, the more biomass you get, the better your soil's gonna be. You're gonna work that out in the next year. That's your main nutrient source for your corn crop. And, you know, my goal is to get like 120 units of N through that legume crop for the next year's corn.
What's your tillage pass after you harvest your oats then? Or are you just directly seeding into that clover with your cover crop?
Okay, so if we seed clover, we're not seeding cover crop. If we don't seed clover, we're going to seed cover crop.
Gotcha.
It's like, what's our issue? Is it weeds, or are we trying to grow nitrogen? You know, we've had times where we've said that we've had too much foxtail in here, so we're going to do maybe even chop our oats. Maybe we lost the oat crop because it was just got too much foxtail, so we chopped it. Terminated that, planted it to a 13-way mix with sunflowers, buckwheat, I mean, you name it, we put it in there. And then choke it out, let it smother. We've even chopped that, fed it to the cows as like a complete silage mix. That's a huge, huge thing to do, just like chop your TMR for the year.
Yep.
It's like 13% protein, it's got sunflowers, it's got zinc, you know, the zinc there. Your protein levels are different, they're different sources of energy, your fibers are all different. It just feeds like a feed I've never fed before because it's all mixed up and it's so diverse. The animals that we fed it to that year, they were so slick all winter, they were shiny and slick all winter. They didn't have any lice. You know, usually you get some lice later in the summer, you know, later in the winter when they're coming out. And I just love that mix. I think we should do a lot more of that where we're mixing species
So after that, what do you prefer to go? You're going into corn the following year, usually after a small grain. It depends.
Yep, that's typically where we're headed. Is a small grain. That's what we're doing on the one farm. That's kind of a rotation is corn oats. Okay, and then like closer to the dairy, we may be corn oats, sorghum. You know, your sorghum's about 80% the nitrogen that the corn takes. So maybe I'm a little short on manure. I'll just put in sorghum. Get another crop that's going to smother pretty good. You know, if I really want to clean the field out,
Yep.
I'll do two smother crops. I need to do a legume, then a grass. I need to go back to whatever you want to do.
Any hay in the rotation?
On certain fields, certain farms, there is. So we do make our oats, and then last year we made 2 crops of clover. All right, I think we're like at 2.5 tons of clover after July.
Yeah.
Pretty good. So, and one thing that clover had is we kind of went away from clover on our farm. My grandfather used to plant it, and then we kind of went to the alfalfas. And now going back to the clover, the cows actually prefer the clover. And I've heard another guy say this before too. They prefer to eat clover over an alfalfa bale. The problem with clover is you can't get it dry, but we have the equipment today to get stuff half wet. You know, so we're making all baleage out of this clover, and the cows just love it. Drill calibration is kind of a big thing. You want to make sure you're going out there, you don't spend a half a day. So for us, this is our no-till drill. We don't no-till with it anymore, but we do disking, and then we actually take the shed and just run the wheel. Just like run the wheel 26 times, a certain amount of distance, certain amount of acres. I do that 4 or 5 times, and then I got my drill set. I know it's set, I know it's right on the nose. There's nothing worse than sending someone out to drill, and you're half a bushel short or 2 bushels short, and then you have to do it again. So I was telling you earlier, we plant clover with our oats, and I couldn't get the rate I wanted, so I had to add this sprocket on here to speed up the drill, so I can drop more seed. That's a huge, just to get it right. You only have one chance to get it right. You might as well do it right the first time. Fertility. Check your soil test. Our soil tests are pretty high. We're on a livestock farm, so our fertility is really not a problem. It's more of a weed issue or a nitrogen issue, whether what we plant. You're looking at your targets, kind of how many bushels you want to grow. It's kind of still that, unit N to a bushel of oats. Okay, if you figure in your tie-up from your corn crop, that's pretty huge. You're gonna have to put something out up front, you know, or add more that year if you're gonna follow a corn crop because of the corn stover out there, for a nitrogen source. Natural sources versus conventional sources, you don't have the availability there. You know, we're looking at only a 65% utilization the first year, where if you use and 35% carryover to the next year. That's kind of the system we're in, is that you don't get all of it up front. You gotta plan ahead. So we put 100 units on, we're gonna get 65 that year, and then 35 will carry over the next year's production, whatever that is. Custom mixes. And equipment calibration are key on here. This is just an example. You know, this is what you need if you want to grow this many bushels. You can find that kind of anywhere. But this is how we do our fertility. We're spreading chicken litter on. Well, this was an oat field the year before. Has clover coming in. This is in the spring. Once in a while, those tractors get kind of wild. You got to teach them how to lead. But this field carried well. This is a wet farm, and that's the wettest spot on the farm. We did the whole farm, and we got stuck once. So that cover crop is huge for carrying your equipment. Drying things out, keeping things circulating. Harvesting and storage. You know, a lot of people have the equipment in their shed to do it. We have a flexible platform that we pin up if we're going to direct cut. Otherwise, we'd have a swathe or two. The only thing I would caution a person about direct cutting on oats is if you wait to direct cut your oats for everything to be dry, you're going to lose some yield because you're going to start dropping those big kernels out of the top. Okay. Barley, we always combine that straight. We don't ever want to swath it. We seem to lose too many barley kernels if we swath it. Setting combine for test weight is pretty simple. You just turn up the air till all your light oats go out the back. Okay, you're going to lose oats. That's just, oats are small grains. You're going to have stuff flying out the back, and you're thinking, oh, I got to turn it down. You know, if you're going to combine 32-pound test weight oats, that's fine. If you want to get 38-pound test weight oats, you're going to have to turn it up. You're going to miss some oats. But you're going to get them back when you when you bale your clover, or it's going to be a cover crop. I'm not really losing oats. I'm just kind of not getting them at that point. Okay. Grain storage, most bins will work. Rye is a little bit tougher. If you got the cheese grater floor in your bins, it doesn't work real well. And then we process them to feed. When we feed our small grains, I hate grinding oats because they take a lot of power and are really slow, but like barley and wheat, process pretty easy. There we go. All right. Oop, too many. So here we're taking, I think it's rye or barley standing, and this is where the platform had that we, pinned up the flexible part. And this is actually a hybrid wheat or hybrid rye, I think. And we're just cutting the top 10 inches off of it, and then we come back later and mow it with a hay vine. The hay vine's meant the most straw, where a combine isn't. There's a lot less of stuff going through the machine. You can go quite a bit faster with that, and get a lot more done in a day. Here's our swather. We're cutting about 10 inches tall, trying to just stay above the clover. We don't want to cut the clover. Know we're going to come back and cut it later on. The first crop of clover we cut usually has quite a bit of straw in it, but it works really well for dry cow or heifer feed. We winter our oats, we bale it and or chop it for bedding. You can figure oat yield just like you kind of do everything else, corn or soybeans, just by kernel count. And then this is something we've done, is mixing our small grains together to kind of capitalize on that polyculture. We've mixed field peas, oats, and wheat. That's a tremendous feed. It's a straight, you can almost just feed it right out of the wagon. It's like a 13% protein, a lot of fiber in it, a lot of digestibility in it. It grinds really nice because of the wheat and the peas. And we feed this to small calves and other livestock. We chop our oats for bedding instead of using sawdust like some of the dairies. We chop all our oats really fine, our straw, and fed the cows that way. Underseeding versus summer covers. We've done both. They both work very well. It's just addressing your concern, whether it's weeds or you need want more biomass, trying to build carbon. This picture here is the clover right before we cut. It's about 10, 12 inches tall. And are you going to harvest the following crop, or you just want to leave it out in the field to winter kill? There's some pictures from the year, oats coming up, mid-season, where you only got a sprout or two of clover. It's swath, you got in the field here. This is what I was talking about. If you don't increase your alfalfa or your clover seeding population, this path here I drove too wide, and just that small path is just solid weeds. If we don't compete, we're going to have a weed problem. Oh, wrong way. All right, this is our 13-way mix. We grow sunflowers in Iowa, and this is the stuff I talked about that we chop for heifers. It was just phenomenal feed. It's chest high. If you left that, my goal was to leave it, but I needed the feed. I was going to work that in the next year and use it as a green cover crop, green manure crop, but ended up needing the feed. But anyways, it choked everything out. Did a good job there. Just some more pictures. Here's the weed competition. You got the weeds are like this. The oats and clover compete very well. This is actually where we interseeded beans into our barley crop that year. And just see the difference in weed height versus the bean height. The bean heights, look like mid-calf. This is foxtail, just little guys. They're getting choked out. They can't handle the stress of the oat crop sucking all the nutrients out. But the beans handle it just fine. One thing about this, one, you don't cultivate the beans. Two, that first node in the beans is up a little bit, so you don't have to run your platform directly on the floor, or so you're not scooping up rocks if you have any. Here's our second cutting clover after oats. It's a big heavy crop. Some of our dairy cows there grazing in the field. We feed those guys with it. Usually about 18 to 22% protein. Okay, now we'll get into anybody have any questions on the small grains?
How did you get the seeding in the rye, winter rye?
So in the fall, we planted the winter rye, and then just went in, when the rye was about this big, we time weeded it, or kind of run the drag over it to pull out the small weeds. And we planted it with a row crop planter. And we drilled it, and we've also planted it with a row crop planter. They both seem to work well. The problem is that when I planted with a row crop planter on the contour, my combine didn't necessarily stay off the row. I was going around the corner because of the wheelbase, and I ended up driving on a lot of beans. But the row, when we drilled it, it seemed to work better. Then we only had one track where the combine wheel was.
That was rye and beans?
Rye and soybeans, yep. Yep.
Do you market any small grains, or do you feed it all?
We market small grains. We mainly oats.
Okay, I understand the oats, that's pretty easy.
Yep.
The barley and the wheat?
Barley and wheat there's an organic market for them as feed. Yep. Locally, there's people.
How far do you have to take it?
Probably all the farther you'd have to go. Most likely, within a 50-mile radius, probably would catch. We want to gain them. You probably want to have 100,000 bushel of it to market, but you can market a couple loads. It's pretty easy. Yep. So I'm just going to kind of skip through this. Mainly, my goals for interseeding is to manage weeds. Okay, I want to knock those weeds out, create competition. Don't give them a bare slate to start from. Plant timing, we're doing, trying to get in there at B5 at corn, and we're using a row crop cultivator. My goal is to have something like this when we're done. Get into fall where we have that heavy carbon residue mixed in with some nice lush green material to get faster. You know, my goal is to shove that corn stover down and then that green stuff fall on top and then help with the decomposition, create a better nitrogen carbon ratio to decompose that corn stalk. Because next year this is going to oats, so I have to get rid of that corn stalk residue. There's things like the Smart Mix calculator from green seed cover crops. They seem to do, if you want to figure out what your carbon nitrogen ratio is or match up your nutrient cycling, your nitrogen fixation, they have a whole gamut of whatever, and you can put in poundages, changes, and costs. My goal is to be under like 20 bucks an acre. Okay, I kind of settled on about 4 different species. You want a Nebraska, a radish, a clover, and like cereal or annual rye. That's kind of if you're going to start somewhere, that's kind of where I'd start. This is a picture of a rolled down rye where we planted beans. Cleanest field of beans I ever had on organics. Problem is, if you get a hailstorm, you're going to have to start from scratch. Okay. This worked good the first year. This is our trial. It's like 3.5 acres. Oh, this works great. We're going to do like 40 acre field the next year. Next year we had like when the West Union hit all that hail. Last year we had rye and it didn't turn out. It was a big weedy mess. Okay. More pictures of the cover crops. If you have any questions, go ahead and stop me. But this is kind of unique that as those cover crops come up in that corn, they really stretch for light. They're really getting tall. They're under a lot of stress. And they get so tall they end up falling down. You know, when the corn canopy really closes. And then you think, oh, they're done. And they're under so much stress that the pests actually attack the interceding cover crop before they'll get the corn. All right. We had, this is a year they had silk clippings on a lot of our neighbors' fields. We didn't have horn landing. You can see the holes in the Nebraskas there, and that's how we seed it. We just, when we're doing our last cultivation pass, we just blow it out the back and it gets covered up. And then that comes up next, or turns into that first picture we had in fall. This is the first time I've ever seen a honeybee in the field, and this is buckwheat. On once in a while you have iron blight in the organic field, or ironworm, or crooked driving, one of the two, whatever you want to call it. But this will fill in nice and eliminates the pigweeds, the ragweeds. Doesn't give that opportunity up there that for those weeds to come.
So that buckwheat seeding out?
Yeah, it'll seed out. I'm not really worried about it. It's a pretty easy plant to kill. It's got a short season on it.
So any like cultivation pass or something the following year would take care of any?
Yeah, it's still probably come up, but it's not I wouldn't call it a pest.
No.
It's something that I can control. Like if I was a pigweed, I'd be like, that sucks, you know. But I'd rather have this than a pigweed any day. Right? Same picture again. And I think we're really missing out here. This just shows you the dynamic of what a worm can do. You know, I figured the other day, I don't know why, I just got bored. That's about a 1/4 inch hole that big night crawler's got in there, right? Anyway, so I was thinking, I was standing in my field looking at my neighbor's field, and I think, he doesn't have any earthworms. I said, well, I wonder how big a hole is an earthworm. I want probably 4 earthworms per acre. If I have 4 earthworms per square foot. If I have 4 earthworms per square foot on an acre, which is about the size of a football field, is essentially the same as having like a 4-foot culvert going straight down. That'll drain a lot of water. That's huge. And we're losing our ability to do that by overworking our ground too deep or disturbing them too deep. And then we're also, insecticides, herbicides, and fungicides, it all affects those earthworms. Our soil biology is really taking a hit. And look at those guys. They made all kinds of holes in there. Here's a picture of our soil in our soybean field. I was in the comment, I could see these earthworms castings in the field. from the combine, see, I gotta get out and take a picture of this. So they're in our field, they're really working our soil over it. That's all earthworms castings in there. I didn't shake it or it's huge. This is the stuff we kind of want to plan into. This is just the piles of those earthworms. There's an earthworm den there. The other thing we have now is puffballs. We're starting to get puffballs on our land, where didn't know that was even something that would happen. And this is our pasture area. Used to be converted conventional ground. We're starting to see puffballs all over our pasture. So we're getting the fungi and the bacteria back to where it needs to be. Rotational grazing. I don't like ragweeds, but apparently my cows do. They eat the heck out of those things. They're great cow feed. So when we're looking at our weeds, can we look at them as a food source for our livestock instead of trying to deal with them as conventionally whether tillage or sprays.
Like in August, they're like 29% protein.
Yeah, they're great. They'll go out there and go nuts over 'em. That's only like an hour or two. It's just nuts. They're 6.5 foot tall. This is a picture of our rolled down rye beans. You can see the mat that's underneath there. This is the day we had like 7.5 or 9.5 inches, and I took those beans out and I moved that mat back, and you can just see the worm castings. They hadn't even been disturbed. So covers are huge.
How did you roll that?
We have a roll crimper that we rolled it, so like a 10-footer. You're not gonna get much done in a day, but it does work. You can go pretty fast. My neighbors thought I had a pretty weedy field for a while. And so did I until I drove by and I'm like, oh, right here is where I interseeded our cover crops the year before. All the other plants died out except for the annual rye. I didn't turn the switch on. So, and then it was, by the time we terminated, it was about 6-8 inches tall. That really held the soil up. I mean, this farm is a really eroded farm up here on the side hills. We finally are turning that back brown, or black.
On your annual ryegrass, that's another one I'd like to use, but I'm a little concerned with organic. Are you not worried about that one coming back on either, or?
Well, you don't let it go to seed. You definitely don't let it go to seed, and if you're going to take care of it early, some people could graze this. If you're gonna have that capacity to do it, if you had a fence around it, you could graze this through the month of May.
So interseeded in your corn.
Yep, with those.
Is it likely to come to seed? Not likely.
Not us. We'll terminate it before it gets big. So, another spot I couldn't stand it. I had to go back and seed in some cover crop. I missed the spot here again. I don't know what I was doing, but anyway, so we can have them out on pasture too. Late you get some cover crops. This is that 13-way mix. After we'd cut it off, it regrew some of it, and we're grazing the rest of it off. We're kind of our own. We create our own problems, and we got to create our own solutions. Soil's about $25 a ton, and you're losing $3 to $5 tons a year. So whether you take it, take the step forward and start dealing with it on your own, it's costing you the same either way. So I'd rather take the step forward, spend the $20 an acre or $25 an acre to save my soil, or let 75 or 150 bucks go down the drain. I'd rather take that initiative and save that soil. So.
What is that from, Scott?
I can't remember. I was late reading it, and I'm like, oh, this is pretty good. I better snap a picture. Yeah. But I think it's from Sir Albert Howard's book, I believe. So,
just 3 or 4 minutes left for questions for Scott.
Do you what proportion of your ground do you get cows or livestock over during the course of a year?
So the home farm is 174 acres. We graze 149 of it. That's like set up pasture. and then we'll graze the other bit after we harvest. Like say we had corn silage, we'll graze the underseed cover crop, or we have a hayfield there, we'll graze that. That's our main farm, like about 150 acres of 164 acres of grazing. We're trying to go across the road or go to another farm, but it's the lack of effort, I think, has not gotten the fence built. So, but that's our goal, is to get on another farm with our livestock to spread us out some more. So.
So you kind of mass grazing the whole thing, or you?
Oh no. We're every 12 hours we're breaking. We get, we're putting 230 to 250 head on a little over 2 acres. So we didn't have that little fungus puffballs pictures until we started doing that, where we really started taking the top half and just trampling the rest. That's when we started getting the fungus, the puffballs growing in our pastures. We started pushing that low quality feed back in the soil. And those cows will punch it up so bad you think you chiseled it. But come around the next time, it'll be just fine. Because you have the roots in the soil to regrow.
What maturity are you grazing your grasses at with your milk cows?
We're grazing probably knee high, so there's some flowers out there.
There is.
There's some heads, but if I cut the heads, I'm losing my seed. So if I do tear up a patch, I don't have any seed to regrow, and I got to buy it. So I'm really
Yeah, that's kind of what I was asking for. Is it hard to find the good milk production and the soil health balance, so to speak, if you're not laying down a more mature stand and keeping the carb?
I think it has more to do with, are you allowing them to get full on what's good? That's why we're moving them twice a day. That's the main thing, because you'll have an orchard grass with a head out, and they'll eat all the leaves around the orchard grass that just have a stem.
Yeah.
So there's 180 relative feed value. That's what they like to eat all over the pasture. Now, just like how much is out there, So if you clip the top half, you're probably going to have that. You're going to make them go down and get some stems. You're not going to have it anymore. So it's just kind of whatever you think you can push your cows to. We don't push the cows very hard, but we do push the heifers. We have a spot we need to clean up. We'll push the heifers through there and say, you're going to eat it. When it's done, you can move. That's kind of where we're at. So
I think Scott will be hanging around for a little bit if you guys have any last minute questions you want to ask him. But it is time to rotate to the next station, so let's give Scott a nice round of applause. Scott probably doesn't want to admit this, but he has been a mentor for me as well, so he's a good resource. And thanks for presenting today, Scott. We appreciate it. Check as you rotate around. I think check the table for door prizes. See if you're a winner. Walk by the greeting table, and I think you have 5 or 10 minutes to your next station.
And one more thing I'd like to say though, if you're going to do cover crops, interseeding cover crops, start small, start a little bit at a time. Maybe go get some seed and try a few rows, in a cornfield before you really go all out and spend the money on the equipment. That's what I would recommend, is try a little at a time. But it's, if you can kind of come back to your basics, for me was the ryegrass, the brassica, the turnips, the purple top turnips, and then some kind of clover, whether it's red clover or Pearson clover. That was my main mix. And then I've been adding to that to get other mixes together. So I get like a base mix, and then if I'm going to go corn silage ground or some other ground, I'll mix it up differently to get what I want.